All right, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank God for the opportunity to tell you guys a message of hope and grace as Jesus as the hero of my story. I also want to dedicate this message of hope and grace to my wife's brother, who died at the age of 26 of an overdose, and our cousin Chad, who died of alcohol at the early age, and finally to all the people who we know in our lives that are still struggling and their families torn apart from the battles they fight on a daily basis. And to Mary, who had recently died at the age of 20 and left behind a 1-year-old child. And by God's grace, this is the motivation for this message. Proverbs 28:28, or 25:28, like a city that is broken down without walls, leaving it unprotected, is a man who has no self-control over his spirit and sets himself up for trouble. I lived in Bricktown my whole life, and my mother and father had what I thought was a good marriage. I had 2 sisters. My dad was a cop, and my mom stayed at home and took care of the house and her 3 kids. Early on, I was labeled as a problem child, or the one who was always getting into trouble because of my behaviors. I was around 6 or 7 years old, and my parents started to notice I was behind in learning. I had a hard time concentrating reading and got classified with learning issues. Around that time, my willingness to respect authorities was very poor. From my parents to teachers and even babysitters, I didn't really listen that well. That's when the abuse started. For example, one time my mom and dad went out on a date, and while the babysitter watched us, I was acting up and told the babysitter she was fired. And she called my parents, and when they came home, my dad beat me so bad with his police belt, and my sisters were screaming for him to stop and were crying. For the next week or so, I had a hard time sitting from the welts on my butt. But when I went to school, I tried to use the bathroom in the classroom, and I remember crying because I couldn't sit down and go to the bathroom for about a week. A lot of these moments would scar me from the most of my life. Growing up in my house was not easy for me. My younger sister was daddy's little girl. My older sister from my mother's previous marriage was always at her dad's on the weekend. My family home life was very dysfunctional. My father was never home, and my mother struggled with bipolar disorder. With no understanding what I was going through, and why I behaved the way I did, I was the center of attention, but not in a good way. I never really had much love and affection in my house. I was always tense and walking on eggshells for me, waiting for the next time I did something wrong and got a beating again. Back then, I didn't know God or church because my parents did not go to church. Both my parents went to Catholic school and suffered from a case of what I like to call the nuns. So as soon as they could get away from religion and those bad memories, they did. As I got older, more abuse started coming more frequently, from being duct taped to a chair due to my hyperactivity, to my dad breaking a 2x4 over my arm when I was older. As time moved on, I started hanging out with friends and getting more and more into the wrong crowd and hanging with older kids trying to fit in. That's when I started using alcohol for the first time, followed shortly thereafter by smoking pot. I finally thought I found people that understood me and a substance that gave me instant gratification and let me forget all I was going through. But it was only temporary. I needed more to cover up the scars and the pain and the lies that I believed. This is where I believe my addiction started, looking for happiness and purpose in people and substances to fill the void that I had inside. My life came to a crashing halt in 2001 when I was drinking at a bar in Toms River, and I drove and crashed my Corvette into a basically I was leaving, coming down Toms River on 37, and went to go put the CD into the CD player, and I looked up. Next thing you know, there was a red car lights. I swerved out of the way, hit a transformer wire, hit a transformer box, and then hit a light pole in Pet Boys parking lot so hard that my car was on top of it. And the only thing that was crushed was the firewall on the driver's side all the way to, and the rag top looked like somebody shredded it up with like it was confetti. I still don't know how I survived that. But my father being a cop, paid off finally. I didn't hit anyone, so I was able to get my charges knocked down and got a slapped on the wrist. As I look back, this is where I saw God working in my life. He had plans for all the scars and wounds I had along the way. About 3 months later, my wife would change forever. I was bulkheading in a neighborhood in Brick, And out of the corner of my eye, I see this girl in a bikini playing with 2 kids, and the guys I was working with dared me to go ask her out. As I approached her, it was a girl I thought was hot and always wanted to ask out, but couldn't because she was dating some guy all through high school. I asked her out to dinner, and we dated for a while. I truly believe God sent her to me, sent me an angel that day, because this woman I now call my wife would embark on a 17-year nightmare that would probably save my life. From this point in the story, I would like to say that what you heard so far is my testimony on how I wandered around with the scars of destruction of oneself that took place. From this point forward, I know that this is the point in my life began to change into a message of God's grace, mercy, and with Jesus as the hero of my story. As he began to slowly walk alongside me and pull out all the roots and labels and lies that the enemy was telling me until I was clean and pure in heart, as the man stands before you now. The rest of this story is how God saved me from a car wreck and then sent me an angel to lead me into a life filled with God's plan and purpose. Proverbs 24:16, a righteous man falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of disaster and collapse. After this, I would like to say that I have been sober ever since, but that's not the case. I managed to string up 3 rehabs, 2 funny farms, leading to the last year and a half where I wanted to focus on, because a lot of us know the pain we have caused others and ourselves, but that's not why I'm here. I'm standing before you now to show you that God has a purpose for the pain in my life. Psalms 32:8, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you. You are willing to learn with my eye upon you. So right around this time, I started a new church. Me and my wife got married out in Methodist church, and then because my son's autistic and had special needs, the child care that they didn't have what it took to basically contain him. At the time, he was causing, we would go to service and stuff, and then he'd be climbing underneath the pews and stuff, and we really wouldn't be, we'd be at church, but we really wouldn't be paying attention. And at this time, I had put a couple years in AA and NA together right around this time. But like I said, there was always like a link in the chain that was missing, or I couldn't figure out what the purpose was. So we had switched over to New Beginnings. That's my home, place that I worship now in Bricktown. And it was right around then. We were there for a while. My marriage was, bumpy and shaky. Me and my wife had been together for a good 9 years at the time. Then I decided to give my life over to God, and I got baptized, and things started to change for me. I can't say that I didn't drink. I can't say I didn't steal. I can't say a lot of things, because all that stuff still happened. I was definitely, I had issues. Still didn't. Looking back on it, I still believe that I really didn't surrender, and I didn't. I think I kind of like half Heine did. Like, you go to AA and you get, you go there, you sit in the meetings, but you don't get a sponsor. The same thing. Like, I would go to church, I would worship, but I wouldn't read the Bible, or just doing it the way you want to do it. And I did a lot of that through my life. I figured, like, I get a little piece of it, I see the silver lining in it, and then I would just basically, just do it my way, because my way just always worked for me, you know what I mean? But it did take me to new heights. Corey, that's in the front row. We did a Bible study together at the church, and I took a leadership program. This is around this time I had 4 years clean. I was going to New Beginnings, and I got asked by the pastor to start this pilot program for this 18-week course. I went through that. Things were great. My marriage started to get better, but something just still wasn't obviously there. My wife's father had passed away right after we did like a Love Dare. It was a Bible study we did, and my wife's father passed away, and she was like broken. So I thought, my own selfish ambitions and, trying to fix everything, I figured, this would be my opportunity to fix my marriage. and I could, atone for all the pain and heartache that I caused my wife over the years. Well, she didn't receive it like I thought. They wound up putting in my leadership progression to facilitate a small group. The same night as the grief share, I prayed about it, and I felt led to allow her to do the grief share to in support of what happened with her father, and the next thing you know, I took a step back, and slowly over the next year, I wound up getting kicked around like a can by the enemy, and wound up relapsing about a year later. It didn't happen right away, but it was a slow situation and transition into it, because she was down, she was depressed, and I did what I did best. And as soon as the crap hit the fan, I would just turn to other substances and coping mechanisms. All the while being bipolar as well, dual diagnosed, I struggle with my medications too. I mean, everything was always like a lot of acceptance for me, and coming to the understanding that around this time, I would look at my situation as like another failure, or another another disappointment in in the career or the history of my life. It was like, just seemed like it always would pile up in that way. The definition of endurance is the ability to transfer our ability and not give up and stand firm. We need to not quit even though we want to. We have to press on for the people that didn't get the opportunity to. Do we choose to stay the course and of better understanding, allowing the trials and tribulations to teach us and show us what God is trying to teach us, so we can learn and grow? Or am I gonna allow the enemy to affect and change my heart to the person I was always, and that destructive personality? Brokenness allows us to allow God to use the past to strengthen us and tell our story as Jesus as the hero who came into our lives and gave us hope and a direction that gives us purpose for the pain that has brought us to know Jesus. God doesn't need us, we need him. He doesn't force himself on us. He's a gentleman, and he waits for our cooperation. I like to say that this is the end of the end, but still struggling, having a purpose-driven life that didn't require the use of a substance to fill the void inside that only Jesus could. But I kept pressing on, praying for restoration from this life, all the while not understanding why I couldn't beat this and truly want to stop. But something was still missing, and the things in my life kept getting worse. Till this summer, even though my marriage was almost over, now my two kids saw their dad as something I never wanted to be. I kept choosing to fight. 1 Timothy 6:12, fight the good fight of faith in the conflict with evil. Take hold of the eternal life to which you were called, and for which you made the good confession of faith in the presence of many witnesses. So that's what I did. I went down to Florida, and this was kind of, I don't know, it hurt this time. Last summer, I went to treatment as well. Kind of sucked. I was like, last year, I went to, I was 40 years old, struggling with just my life in general. I didn't want to be reminded from my wife of the past. I couldn't figure out how to beat this thing, and it was just whooping my butt, plain and simple. And I guess I basically just surrendered in the wrong direction. For me, it took me also to new heights, training for a Tough Mudder, going to the gym 7 days a week. And, my wife went away or whatever, and, I wasn't on my medication, by the way, at the time either, so that didn't help nothing. But I wound up leaving the house and figuring, all I want to do is be happy, and I'm going to leave. And then, sure enough, what the enemy threw at me, everything my wife wasn't doing, everything that, that I was looking for in my wife that she wasn't giving me, and that's what just happened to drop in my lap. Met this one girl this one night, met this other girl this other night, And in my head, in my mind, which is not always the best place to be, you know, I was done. I was done with the marriage. I was over. You know, I was going to figure out a way to make it on my own, and I was done. You know, 15 something years of marriage, I had enough. And I thought, to be honest with you, you know, the thing that went through my head is I thought that she was never going to forgive me, and you know, and that alone, you know, caused me, you know, to be a failure at another thing in my life. Just added to the mix and added to the stuff, and you know, obviously, you know, the girl I was talking to or whatever else, you know, she didn't know that part of me, and you know all that other crap that comes along with that. But guess where that found me? It found me, you know, living in my car, you know, eating McDonald's on food cards, and you know, eating, you know, Dunkin' Donuts and stuff like that, and staying in my car. And then I was going to the tattoo shop to get stuff done, some work done. And this is where my wife had finally eventually started fighting for the marriage. She was following me all around. I didn't know at the time. She was tracking my Easy Pass. She was like doing all sorts of stuff, following me around. So she found out that I was FaceTiming, or this is why I hate social media. I was doing one of those FaceTime thingies or whatever, and I was talking to my daughter, and I had gotten I had done pot gummies a couple times, and they didn't even work. I was eating like 2, 3, 4 of them or whatever, and they didn't work or anything. So this one time, I must have got like a real one or whatever. So I took it when I left the tattoo shop. By the time I got up on 37 to the Speedway, I was on the phone with my daughter, and I'm like nodding out. So here I am, like, you know, next thing you know, I wake up and I got like RoboCop for cops is giving me like a DUI check. And I wound up failing it, and here I am, like, you know, leaving thinking I had like this all figured out, and here I am, you know, now getting arrested for the first time at 40 years old. So yet again, thinking I had the right answers, here we go again, back into another treatment. So I go down to Florida thinking that God was trying to step in and trying to catch me before I went too far down the rabbit hole. I go down to Florida, I'm down there for 28 days, 30 days, and came back. Had all the intentions of this is it. I had it. You know, I mean, you know, I still had to put the work in. I still had to put the time in, but I thought I had it this time. I come to find out that the medication they put me on is the same stuff that my mom took for her bipolar, and my mom's in a nursing home on kidney dialysis 4 days a week. So for me to put my health in order to try to get this, or have something to work alongside with me and help me to battle this fight that I've been battling my whole entire life, I was willing to do it. I come back, I find out that they're over medicating me, and I came off the medication. I'm back like 2 days. Then my wife, you know, going backwards here, tells me we go out to eat. I went to Danino's Pizza in Brick, because that's like my favorite pizza place, and my wife tells me that she's the one that called the cops. So I'm like, wow, that was like a whole big bombshell. I had to leave. I couldn't deal with it or whatever at the time, because I'm like, I couldn't believe, like, you know what I mean, that like I went down on this journey thinking it was possibly God trying to intervene, and then I come to find out that my wife is the one that called the cops and put me in jail for the first time. So needless to say, I was trying to separate myself from her. She was trying to fight back. I got caught in the middle, not like I was doing anything wrong or anything at the time, but I wound up getting jammed up that way. And then, you know, everything in my life seemed to, in some way or another, come around full circle. This is the you know, expression I would use for probably about the last, I don't know, quite a while. Everything in my life would come full circle. And getting to this point about 8, 9 years ago, I found out when I was struggling with my addiction and stuff, my wife used to always say to me, every time you drink or use, it's like me, it's like me having an affair on you. Well, guess what? That obviously wound up coming to pass, and it was supposed to be an emotional affair. And I forgave the 2 people involved, and that was probably right around those 4 years when I thought I was at the most spiritually fit at that time in my life. And I moved on, you know. But I came back, I had that, I was fighting. The worst thing I ever did was open my heart to two different people, because that was the hardest thing for me to do. The addiction, that's one thing, but to have two women in your life that you like at the same time is like the worst thing I could ever do, you know, for me at least at that time. And you know, then she got so pissed off that I was still talking to this girl that she thought she had told me, and she actually did mess around with the person, and then that set me off. And so you had the medication, the first bomb, the second bomb, and then I got a settlement for $10,000. So what do you think somebody with a history of addiction and all that kind of stuff was going to do? I did what I did best. You know, I went back out on the destructive path. I missed Thanksgiving, so this Thanksgiving this year was definitely a blessing. But leading back to this year, going down to Florida, the day I called down to Florida, this is where like God's like, you know, where I started fasting. You know, I went to Riverview Pavilion. I was in there for about a week. I got Baker Act by my wife, and I was drinking. I was taking medication at the time. So while I was in there, I was pretty hot and heavy and furious. But I just read the Bible and started to begin to I don't know, to you know, turn towards God and you know, never look back. And so this whole time, you know, so I got out of there. I called this guy Adam Mogul up, and he got me into the Transformations down in Florida. And I go down there, and the day I called down there, or the day I called to go down there this year, was the day I arrived down in Florida last year. So it was like the worst anniversary you could possibly have. You know, going to, you know, from one year to the next at the same time, going into a treatment facility. And so I arrived down there, and then, you know, this is where, like, you know, I started to see things change for me as far as, you know, me putting forth the effort, like I said, turning towards God and not looking back, and starting to see God showing up in my life little by little. Down in treatment, struggling with stuff, you know, things suck because, you know, things were, I thought I saw stuff before I left, and I was fearful. I didn't even want to leave. I thought my life was talking to somebody else because she just had it. I mean, she did it before, so, you know, obviously I went down the path I went down again. So, what, you know, what are the chances of that happening again? To me, in my, you know, to me in my eyes, I thought that's what I was seeing. So I was very fearful of leaving, and I'm down there, and next thing you know, it, sign number one, standing in the back room over there. You know, what are the odds that God sends somebody to the same treatment place that grew up on the street that he lives on the street that I grew up on, and is from the same town. And you know, we hit it off down there. He kept me in line, and kept me, you know, he's real big support for me, and we kind of piggybacked off each other as far as helping each other get through, you know, the situations down there in treatment. I was on, it was right around when Dorian was going to hit. He had struggled through situations with hurricanes, so he had his reasons. And I had my reasons from Sandy. And I was about to beat feet. I'm like, I'll go back to an IOP, but you got a Category 5, like never hit the United States before ever, coming down our way. I'm like, I'm out of here, you know? You know, so that was the plan. But, you know, I prayed about it, and things didn't materialize from there. And we went to the other side of Florida, and we stayed up in a hotel. Everything wound up being fine. I got back, and at that time when I was in the Transformations, I took the Christian track, because I needed a spiritual reboot. For so much of my life, I was chasing that 4 years of sobriety. I was chasing that spiritual high that I had, or spiritual journey that I was on, but it never came. It never came, and I think every time it didn't come, or every time I would screw up, it would just break my heart again, and just cause me more, it would allow me to just to indulge in things that I had no business indulging in. So one of the assignments when I was down there, in this Christian processing group that I was in, I had to write my own psalm. So I'm going to read it to you. Father God, why do I feel lost? The pain I have inside rattles my soul to the core. That makes me feel separated from you at times. These chains are heavy around my neck. Please, Lord, free me from this bondage that plagues my life and tears me away from your radiant light. Father God, what is the purpose for this pain that I have to endure as I sit here and write this by the shore? I know that you use all things for your glory, but I'm questioning this story. There's no guilt, no shame. Your love is never ending, and you created me, and you have a reason for all this pain I have had to endure. So I will continue to have faith that you will restore my soul. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, I surrender. So now with having somebody down there in treatment, there was all these little things that would pop up, and I would see little signs, as I was going through the treatment of like just God showing up in my life. Like I said, I was fasting, reading the Bible. I really didn't watch TV besides Tom wanting me to watch a couple movies here and there, but I was down here on a business trip. This was life or death for me. My marriage wasn't going to hold up. Like I said, my kids are 10 and 8 now. And my family didn't have much more left in it. Me and my dad, have a poor relationship. My dad being the cop, all that beating, all that stuff, that took a toll on me that I would always pop up through the course of mine and his relationship. But it would, I would think I thought I could move past it. And then I would drink, and then all that stuff would just rear its ugly head up again. And, and the lack of affection and the lack of, love in my household, especially from my father, the one I looked up to the most, just that devastated me through the course of my life, allowing me to look for affection and love and just people's what's the word I'm looking for? People's approval in the wrong places possible. So me and my dad. I mean, I'm 41 now, and my dad's still not said "I love you" to me. I mean, for whatever it's worth, it kind of sucks. Since I've been back, we still haven't talked. I don't know what I'm going to do with that situation yet. I guess I'll have to figure that out. He really doesn't socialize with my kids. I mean, I gave him the nickname Holiday Dad, because he only comes around in the holidays. But God gives you certain blessings along the way. I met by meeting that guy Tom. I came back. I got a job. I was a chef for like 25 years, and I got a job at this place just to make ends meet. And the next thing you know, I went over and had coffee with his mom and talked to her for a little bit, and then met his father. And now I work for his father. We have a great relationship. So you get father figures and inspiration and other people that come into your life. You just have to be there to witness them and to recognize them when they happen. When I was down there, I didn't leave because of the hurricane, because I prayed about it and things just didn't work out how they did. We came back, and I was at a church service, and I was reading in the bulletin, and it had baptisms. I was 4 days before I was going to leave. So I'm like, you know what? I already got baptized 10 years ago. But like, let me start fresh. I'm going to go home. Let me reconsecrate my life to God again, and just put forth and continue the effort and put like I said, go all in for God and not look back. So I had to get it all approved by the great odds of the treatment place. I mean, it wasn't easy to do, but I wound up being persistent and pushing forth with it, and and felt led that's where I need to be, and that's what I need to do at the time. And from just me having that on my heart to do that and wanting to reconsecrate my life to God again, they wound up approving it, and then about 8 other people went with me from that treatment facility and found Jesus that day and wound up getting baptized in the ocean. But things don't always, like, every time I try to go all out for God, the enemy always has to come in and try to deter me and question my faith. Always. 20 minutes after I got baptized, I'm waiting for everybody else to go on there. When I was getting baptized, I had these pair of sunglasses that float, so I wore them in the water. I figured I ain't gonna lose them, whatever floats. So as I was coming up out of the water with my back, the wave hit me, knocked my sunglasses off. So now I'm running on the beach trying to find my sunglasses floating on the beach, and I wound up tearing my calf muscle on the beach 20 minutes after I got saved. So right out of the gate, the enemy's questioning me, questioning my faith. Now here I am down in Florida in treatment, on crutches, and another aha moment or God moment was, the fact that 2 days later, it happened on Saturday, August 14th. Saturday, the 18th, I was leaving. Saturday, the 16th, August 16th, would have been 1 year ago to the day that I tore my calf muscle the year before. So I was emotional, I was upset, but it got me to thinking how like going to treatment for the same time last year, same time this year, tearing my calf muscle, same time this year, same time last year, and even for that in that aspect, Thanksgiving this year was kind of emotional for me, because the thing that came to my mind when I was emotional on the car back ride, not figuring out what I was going to do. Now I'm on crutches in treatment, torn calf muscle. I was on, I was devastated. I had all these ambitions coming back, and I kind of, all of a sudden, the Holy Spirit put it on my heart and was like, you know what? This is almost like God's giving you a chance to rewrite last year over again. And that's how I spun it. And, and that's what I went with. And I can't explain why. Probably the path I was walking down. Went to church that next Sunday, or the next day actually, to the pastor that, did the service. He prayed over me, prayed over my leg. I was praying over my, my leg situation. And I walked off the plane on, with my leg wrapped. Last year I was on the couch for a week and a half. I can't explain why, I can't explain why that happened. Besides my willingness to walk that narrow path like Jesus did. But coming home, another one of them moments, where I'm trying to get at is by me following God's plan for me and what God has in store for me, reading the Bible, studying the scriptures. He started, the scars in my life. That's why I played that song. The scars in my life started to have meaning. There was purpose for the pain that I went through. I would not be standing here last year. I didn't think I would be standing here last year. You know what I mean? Nor did, last year when I came back from the treatment place, I went to Celebrate Recovery in Lakewood, and I had been going there for 6 months. Never mentioned, not once, never mentioned the CFC. And this year I come back, I went to one thing after I got back, and they mentioned this guy, Danny Reagan, and Jay, who's in the audience. I go over to this place, and I found a family. I found a family in recovery that is giving me purpose. Helping other people overcome struggle that we all suffer from, but that doesn't define us. All these moments that I feel God led me and had guided me to put these people in my life so I could fulfill the purpose that He had for me. That never did I think that I would wind up speaking to you guys tonight, like I just said, taking a course online with CFC to facilitate SMART recovery, which is self-management and recovery training. In April, I'm going to be taking it's a state recognized, I think even nationally recognized certificate as a recovery coach to help other addicts. So, it's just like things just started opening up for me to where now I saw that I had a purpose-driven life. And what better field than addiction and, and stuff like that. I mean, I got a PhD and a master's degree, plus 30 credits in this field. So, not really, but I'm just saying through all the pain and heartache that I've gone through, that's what I want to do. I mean, that's what I feel I'm being led by God to put forth and to do for the rest of my life. I mean, like I said, I was a chef for 25 years. I mean, I could take the simplest of food and make it into whatever you want it to be. I've got a lot of carpentry experience and stuff like that, but I get bored. I got OCD, I got every letter of the alphabet, underneath the sun as far as situations, and I never stayed at one job, but I always had a job. I never really had a purpose. You know, my wife, she knew she wanted to be a teacher when she was like going in high school. Like, you know what I mean? I just figured out that I want to help people in recovery and give back, you know, at 41 years old. You know, I had God in my life, you know, since, you know, for the past 10, 12 years. But it wasn't to this last time around where I started putting in the work, putting in the effort, you know, going all in. And, right now I can honestly say that, you know, what my life is now, you know, spending Thanksgiving, you know, not in my car last year like I was. I missed my kids. I didn't share Thanksgiving with my children. It's tough trying to mend a marriage with an autistic child, an addict, you know, for 17 years, 18 years. I mean, if my wife's not an angel for putting up with me for 18 years, for all my addiction and, you know, emotional abuse and everything else. Like I said, she lost her brother. She lost her cousin, died of cirrhosis of the liver. You know, her cousin's panhandling up on the streets in New York. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of this stuff that she's had to deal with, and she stuck with me through all of it. You know, this time around though, when I was out of treatment, she wasn't having it. It was all tough love, and I don't know, whatever it was, it allowed me to show a new appreciation. She used to say that I used to take my kids and my wife for granted. And I guess I did. I mean, you know what I mean? She was like a speed bump in my recovery. You know, I get caught up in my self-indulgence and coping skills and everything else like that. And it would come around and she would catch me, or I get caught. And then my love for her would be greater than the love for the drug. And, you know, at that time would last, maybe it lasted a year. I picked up one chip. I picked up a 2-year chip. I've had 4 years. But then ultimately in the end, whether it was the enemy or whether it was my love for, you know, the addiction, would override everybody else, and I didn't care about anybody else but myself. But like I said, something changed. Now, I got an opportunity here with this organization. I have purpose where not only would I be screwing up and taking away the opportunity or messing up and possibly my marriage being disbanded. You know, breaking my kids' hearts, but now I be letting down, you know, my new family, CFC, Jay, Danny, you know, people that are seeing things in me when it comes to recovery, and they know I have a big heart, you know, to help people. I've always have, but my bipolar and my addiction always got in the way. And I met Harry. I go to Celebrate Recovery as well. But like I said, this organization, I found a new family. We get to go on mission trips. We do a lot of things. We went glass blowing. I've done some things, that I've never done before, and it's been in recovery. And I got to enjoy what God has given me and the joys of life without having to get high or to have to self-medicate because I can't cope with a situation. And without God in my life, I don't think I would have any of that stuff. I wouldn't, have gotten the opportunity to meet a new family that's been there for me since I got back, and a new friend. My wife, it's only been, about 5 months, but, my marriage is on the rise. And, and I always felt that, like, my marriage was going to be won or lost based upon my actions. Never did I believe it, that whole happy wife, happy life situation. But, it took me 17 years to figure that out. But I'm going to leave you guys with this. Ecclesiastes 4:12. A person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but two can stand back to back and conquer. Three are even better than a triple braided cord. It is not easily broken. And that's what the CFC organization has given me. And that's what this new family I have, that's given me strength and confidence with God and this organization that I'm overcoming, and has given me a healthy fear in God and a purpose and a life, and being able to help people like me overcome this label and the stigma that doesn't have to define our future. Thank you everyone for coming, and I hope I inspired you. Never quit on the life that God has for you.
I gotta use the mic, I'm not too loud. Once again, could you please, it's really hard to get up here and speak in front of strangers sometimes, so can you guys please Done a great job. Before we close, I'm just going to touch on something that Rob said that really hit home for me at the end. Everybody's struggle is different. We all struggle with addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, anger, pornography, but we all strive for the same thing. And there's only one really true way to beat it, and that's through Christ. I love what he said. He found a family at the church he went to in Celebrate Recovery, and so did I. We cannot do it on our own strength. We will lose. It's guaranteed. I didn't deal with drugs. Mine was pornography and lust, and I fell multiple times. And the devil loves to attack me. Like what Rob said, he knows exactly what he's going to attack you with, and he will. He's relentless. He wants to see you destroyed. But we have an opportunity. You have an opportunity tonight. This was just the first night, someone pouring out their heart and their story into you. And I just want to give you guys some advice. I don't know what brought you here. I don't know what you're dealing with. But this is not the end of your story. This is just the start of your story.